Coming up on the podcast today, we got Porsche Taycan software being updated, badly needed, I think, to help it charge. Another test on the Tesla Model 3 LFP pack, and why that could be the best car Tesla sell, and how to help rural communities go electric. Those stories and more on EV News Briefly, your new daily rapid-fire insight into the world of electric cars and how we power them as well. My name is Martin Lee. I go through every EV story every day and whittle it down to 10, 12, 14 stories so you don't have to spend all day doing that. Join me later on the longer EV News Daily podcast, episode 1353, for the whole story on all of today's news. Starting with a bit of Volkswagen passenger car news. They're pretty happy at VW, the VW brand itself, exceeding the European CO2 fleet targets. When I say exceeding, I don't mean going up, as in going down the right way, which is a good thing to avoid the EU fines. The fleet average of 113 grams per kilometre versus the target 119. And of course, this year we've got the Chattanooga plant coming online in the US, the ID4 coming out of that. That will all add to the 106,000 plug-in hybrids and 263,000 pure electric cars they sold last year. And as a group, add in Audi, Seat, Skoda, etc. They went to 118.5 grams per kilometre, still meeting their EU targets. They sold 472,000 electrified cars, so full electrics and plug-in hybrids as well as a VW group. And if you're thinking, if you have followed my podcast for years and you're thinking, hang on a minute, they were meant to get under 100, weren't they? Yeah, they were last year or the year before because it was done on the old NEDC cycle. Then they updated the rules to WLTP, which raised, because the cars go faster, it's a long story. But in other words, they are going in the right direction, even though the numbers are actually higher. It's just how it's measured. Audi have the new E-Tron coming. Porsche Taycan have got the new Sport Turismo to add to the range as well. So plenty more EVs to come this year to reduce their fleet CO2 emissions. All right, let's move on and talk another test of the Model 3 from Tesla standard range LFP pack and why I think it could well be the best car they sell. Bjørn Nyland had an opportunity to check it out with his Scan My Tesla app. The LFP lithium iron phosphate pack had a 60.6 kilowatt hours, I think it was. And that's about 9.5-10% more than previously on the standard range. Has about a 2.73 kilowatt hour buffer. But the LFP battery pack wants to be charged to 100%, unlike 80 or 90 and saving 100 for special occasions. So that is a car that you should charge to 100% every day. It's got a real world range of 58 kilowatt hours. And again, this isn't scientific, it's using the app and there's variables in play, but these are kind of rough figures that are pretty close, I think. He knows what he's doing. And that car, if you go to 100% every day, won't take you that much less in terms of distance and range than charging a long range or a performance to 80 or 90% to protect the battery. So, hey, if you don't need the speed, get this one. It's a really, really good car. It will suit you for, I would think, so many different driving situations. We'll discuss that on the podcast later. Some new spy shots to report on the Audi Q6. E-Tron has been spied with its, by the look of it, proper headlights and tail lights as well, which does indicate we're getting close to a full debut of this. It'll be similar to a combustion Q5, but because it sits on a EV platform, there'll be more room inside, so it will be pretty spacious inside. It uses the PPE platform from VW Group, like the Audi A6, E-Tron sedan, the Porsche Macan. That's going to be a big seller, all based on that platform as well. That's an evolution of the J1 platform, which you'll find on the Taycan and the E-Tron. 800-volt architecture, 350 kilowatts peak charging rate, maybe 270 in real life. Audi says that platform will get to 80% in 25 minutes or so. And how much energy could you put, stored energy, into the battery pack? Maybe around 400 miles if you really maxed it with the latest technology. New e-tron coming out as well with updated battery technology from Audi. Tesla Cybertruck next in the news. Yesterday on the show I talked about how there was a picture which came out of the Cybertruck. They said it was leaked. I was a little bit cynical on last night's podcast on the full show, and now Car and Driver saying that the video that came out subsequently and made its way to YouTube also looks a little bit sus. The car isn't moving. There's somebody just off screen apparently turning them on or off the lights. There's cables running along the floor of the bed with sandbags weighing it down. They don't really say anything about the vehicle. These two dudes filming it on their phone with southern accents, implying that this is in Texas, but nobody really knows where this one vehicle was. Car and driver, somewhat, I guess, tongue-in-cheek, saying, oh, look, we're a day away from the earnings call, and here is a leaked video to imply that this vehicle and this factory is more ready than maybe it is. You make your own mind up on that. I'm not commenting. Now we'll talk about Tesla and BYD raising prices in China. Government subsidies actually going down in China as well. They were reduced earlier this month. The Model Y and the Model 3 getting price rises. Increase, look, not too much. The Model 3 now starts just over 265,000 yuan. An increase of 10,000 yuan, and the Model Y goes up about 21,000 yuan. Hike of between 4 and 8% on those prices. In China, they've been going down. Unlike elsewhere in the US and Europe, the prices have been going up. And so, kind of reversing what's been happening with the China pricing for Tesla. Xpeng have raised their prices as well. And Beijing lowering the incentives by 30% earlier this month. But hey, their new energy vehicle strategy looks to be working and on track. Now we'll talk about BMW's iX. Driven fast on the Autobahn, the YouTuber Automan, brilliant channel, did the BMW iX with its 105 kilowatt hour battery pack on the Autobahn at 124 miles an hour. That's 200 kilometers. That is the limiter, the software limit of that car, that SUV. The rain was coming down. It was a headwind as well. So all of those factors, those real life conditions into play. He started at 96%, drove it down to 19%. Had pretty bad consumption, 34 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. And at the end of the test, had done 140 miles or 225 kilometers, driving on average of 75 miles an hour on the Autobahn and maxing out the speed where he could and cruising at, I think, about 160 kilometers an hour. That's 100 miles an hour where he could on the Autobahn. So, you know, not the greatest range test in the world. It was never meant to flatter this vehicle. But in theory, he could have done about 187 miles at that crazy fast pace, which is amazing for a big, heavy SUV in terrible conditions. If you love your Formula E racing, in the UK, Channel 4 has signed a new exclusive broadcast rights with Formula E to show that series in a multi-year deal, starting from this weekend's race in Diriyah. 16 races broadcast for free on Channel 4. Look, Formula E hasn't suffered from not being on free telly. Did it start off on ITV, then Channel 5 and the Beeb, and now Channel 4 as well. So if you want to watch a bit of electric racing, it's easy to see it for free. How do we help people charge in rural areas? Well, Abigail Spanberger and Tom Rice are trying to make it easier in rural areas. Spanberger's a Virginia Democrat and recently introducing legislation co-sponsored by the Republican Rice from South Carolina to expand the Department of Agriculture's funding in the US, which would help local businesses in small populations and on farms and agricultural producers, etc., get loans or even grants for upgrading their energy connections, putting in chargers for their cars, their trucks, their tractors, all going to have to go electric when we're not burning anything anymore. Of course, there is the Biden $7.5 billion infrastructure fund, which could well be used, and they're going to build 500,000 new EV chargers in the US. They could use some of that cash, I guess, to help out those rural communities, those hard-to-reach locations. Let's talk about the famous London black cab. When it's not a cab, it's a van. The London Electric Vehicle Company have developed that range extender taxi into a van, and now through the hire company Europcar, you can actually rent that van. The VN5 is available in 11 cities through Europcar. It is a range extender, about 60 miles on pure electric and 304 miles when you start burning gas as well. But if you can keep it plugged in most of the time, it's a pretty handy little thing. Now we'll talk about Porsche next, upgrading their infotainment system in the Taycan, announcing yesterday that the Porsche Communication Manager 6.0 software is coming out. And that's important because it adds a new charging planner, and you can factor in now the speed of the charging station. So it'll know what's 150 kilowatts or faster and plan the route more efficiently, taking into fast charging, high-powered chargers along your route. You can filter out the chargers and filter in the chargers that you want as well. That kind of is sort of basic if you're writing software for EVs, but hey, it's a good thing, and it'll really help those drivers to navigate a road trip much, much better. Right. Thank you very much for watching today. You can check out the long podcast a little bit later. Just search EV News Daily. If you're finding this on YouTube and you haven't heard of the podcast we've been doing for the last 4 years about electric cars every single day. Thank you to our Patreons that support my work on EV News, and they get their ad-free feed on the podcast as well. Costs nothing to subscribe on the YouTube channel, though. And check out the EV News Daily podcast feed as well, whether you've got time for that full show or just the short one here on EV News Briefly. And I'll catch you later.